Hey everyone, welcome back to The Current. This is Real Talk on Real Topics. My name is Bo. This is Curtis. Excited to bring you another episode. And today's topic, we're talking about faith and science. This is the last part of this series. And today we're going to talk about medicine.
Yeah, this
and
should be
kind
good.
the balance between faith and medicine. So, growing up in, obviously, evangelical Christianity, this was a big kind of deal, big topic. This was talked about a lot.
Yeah.
It was kind of this idea of, like, the tension between science, as in medicine, and our health being changed and affected by faith.
Yeah,
So, there's a little bit of a tension there.
for sure. I think what we're going to see with this conversation is what we're going to, you're going to hear the things we said the last couple times in this series, which is some bad things might happen when we feel the need to pick or choose. You can have faith, you can have science, you can have medicine, or you can have Jesus, but maybe not both.
Yeah, because, I mean, obviously, there's both ends of the spectrum.
For sure.
Clearly.
Yeah.
I've heard the phrase used, why would you need medicine when you have Jesus? Or phrases like, you don't need to go to the doctor, just pray.
Yep.
Things like that. I'm not sure if I shared this in a previous episode, but I was really good friends with a gal who was taking psychology and Christian counseling courses at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary
Okay.
when they decided that Christian counseling was no longer needed. So this would have been, I don't know, probably 10 years ago now.
Okay.
They kind of decided Christian counseling was no longer needed. The mind of Christ is a healthy one. We don't need Christian counselors. And so she got axed her degree, her master's degree in counseling.
Wow.
So she had to go elsewhere to get a Christian counseling degree. So that's what I'm saying. Like, there are implications of this where, like, like, I would argue, like, there are doctors to help the mental state of your body.
Yeah.
Just like the physical side, there are doctors for the mental side. And to say that, a mind of Christ is a healthy one and you don't need a doctor, it's pretty much the same thing. It's kind of the tension we're getting at.
Yeah.
So this has, like, serious implications, kind of where it's affected, more than I think what we realize within the church and seminaries and Christianity as a whole.
I think so too. I will say, and I'd love to get your thought on this, but I feel as if I've noticed some improvement over the last so many years in this.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I think since then it's changed. Probably. Even in the Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, maybe they've. I'm not really sure.
I'm not sure.
I'm hoping they have, because I agree with you. I think culture as a whole has started to improve.
Yeah.
With at least the mental illness side of
Sure.
things.
Yep. I can definitely recall having conversations, and this bleeds into a couple other things, but conversations with people when I was younger around church that, kind of set that same sort of dichotomy up, like, hey, you're sick or you have things, like, you can pray, like, God will take care of you. And it sort of bleeds into sometimes, I think, this idea of, like, oh, hey, like, well, the only reason you're sick is because you must have sinned or something,
Yeah.
God can heal you, if you would just pray, he wants to. And I think when we set people up to say, hey, you don't need medicine, all you need is Jesus, and then when Jesus doesn't come through, people start asking that question of,
Well, what I do wrong.
Then what happened? What happened? And so this gets wrapped up into, I think, so much more as well. But I'm so thankful, I think, in the last few years, I hear that sort of rhetoric less and less.
Yeah.
I think Christians are getting a bit better on board with how to incorporate science into their faith, but maybe we still have a little bit of ways to go.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, you're exactly right, thinking that, if Jesus is the answer, medicine's not required, or, doctors, and we don't need any of that stuff. Yeah, what did I do wrong? And I know Abby and I experienced that firsthand. I may have shared this on the podcast before, but, I took a new job. It was quite a ways away from our family. Right after we moved there, my wife had a miscarriage. Now, at the time, we didn't know. We were really young. We didn't know how regular that occurred. Like, it is a very common thing. Yeah. We had no clue. But then someone very close to us in her family, made the point to say, well, we shouldn't have moved. It was almost like our actions caused this. It's almost like we made a bad decision, so this is what God is doing.
Yeah.
And that was, like, again, like a parent in her life, it's like someone very, very close to us.
Oh, man.
And so just the hurt that we felt from that,
Yeah.
But that's, again, that's the idea of, on the flip side of having that type of framework is can cause some serious harm. You know?
Yeah.
So we dealt with that, personally. So yeah, really, really rough. But obviously we didn't believe it at the time, and we certainly don't believe it now.
Good.
God doesn't, I mean, I kind of had enough, just idea of how God worked, I guess you could say, to just say like that's not true, but still hurtful nonetheless.
Yeah.
But anyway, so as we talk about medicine, obviously I think just in general we're speaking of just science in regards to our physical health, mental health, emotional health, how it helps us.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's the goal of medicine, is to make us well. And so when we speak about medicine, that's what we're talking about, just kind of all encompassing that. And when we talk about faith, we're talking about Jesus, Christianity. Now, I think where the tension begins is you do see passages in the Bible that get at this idea of ask and it will be given to you. If there's anything you need, come to me and I will provide that for you. And there's verses and parts in Scripture where I think people, read and they're like, okay, like if I need this, then God will provide it for me. And I think early 2000s, there's kind of a movement, health, wealth, and prosperity.
Right.
Gospel, like you have victory over your cancer.
Yep.
Stuff. And people really, I think, clung to that. Like there is no power that can defeat the power of Jesus. Like, again, you have power over your sickness. And
yeah. I think one of the toughest things about this is that on the surface, a position like that seems so spiritual and seems so like, look at all the faith we have in God. Like, he'll come through for us. On the surface, it seems like that. But I think we need to take some time and, peel back the layer a little bit and say, hey, even though it feels like we're as Christians putting all this faith in God, I think we're doing it wrongly and in ways that can harm us, or at least having just a misunderstanding of who God is, how he works in the world, and what's going on. If you think that, God is the guy that's just up there pulling all the little strings and making sure everything happens, then really your only thing you need to worry about is getting God to say yes. Like, well, if, I'm sick, it's because God wanted me to be, and if I'm healthy, it's because God wanted me to be. And so you look at passages in the New Testament and you see those things where, ask and you'll receive, like, seek and you'll find, knock, the door will be opened. And I want to say on the one hand, I don't want to be the sort of person that says prayer makes no difference. It changes us. It doesn't change our environment. Absolutely, prayer has an impact. But that doesn't mean necessarily that anything you ask for, you're going to get regardless. A good passage I like to talk about is actually one where Jesus is sort of referencing this care for people, that I'll meet your needs, I'll provide for you. He talks about how we don't need to worry about what we should eat or what we should drink. And he says, look at the sparrows, right? They don't forage or whatever. God feeds them, right? He takes care of them. So you're worth more than many sparrows. Don't worry about your food and all that kind of stuff. God's going to provide. And so we'd say in the same way, that's great. The reality is that there's tons of people every year that go hungry, that don't have it, that cry out like this happens. You say, well, what's wrong, Jesus? You don't know what you're talking about here. I think Jesus understood, even in the example of the sparrows, like, yes, God cares for them. He's providing. He's working to bring about as much good there as he can. But that doesn't mean sparrows don't get plucked out of the air by other big predators or by other things going on. I want to have a balance here. And say on the one hand, yes, God cares. Yes, he's active. Yes, he's looking to push back against death and disease and destruction where it can be found. That's what we see in the person of Jesus. At the same time, recognizing that, we live in a war-torn kind of world right now. We're in between. And so, God's not one that snaps his fingers and cleans it all up. There's some, wreckage of just living in a war zone.
Yeah, and it is kind of tricky because I know you and I, we both would agree that miracles can and do happen.
Yeah.
And, like, we will certainly pray for that. You and I have prayed
absolutely
that over people's lives.
Yes.
And we believe it can happen. Doesn't mean it always will, no.
Yeah,
we believe it can. We believe God is, that powerful, and he has the ability to heal our bodies at a moment's notice. If he wants to.
Yeah, I think we have the idea that, because God can do this or has the ability in some sense, there's no need for medicine. And I think we run into some problems there too. I want to say, absolutely God is trying to work and do those things, but God's also great and wants to involve us and have us be a part of what's going on here and wants us to push back against death and disease and be part of what God is doing. And I think, modern medicine and some of those things are a great, fantastic way in which we as humans can look to say, hey, yeah, how can we combat and push against the brokenness and death and disease? And that those are good and valid means. Sometimes say, oh, God can heal me. I think God can heal through doctors too. That's something that's very real and very true as well. Just because it's not some miraculous, I was on death's door one moment and now I'm standing up straight. It doesn't mean that God's not at work in the other means too. Yeah. And so for us to say, well, it has to be through this way, it has to be through some miraculous thing that God works is very, I think, closed-minded and small. Sure. So on the surface, it seems like this big, robust faith, God will heal me. But in reality, I think it's just a bit too small and a bit too simplistic.
Yeah, because no doubt God wants to heal. He wants to. He wants to restore us. He wants us to make us whole. I always use the example of like a car accident. Like, sure, can God save someone by a miracle right after the accident happens when no one else is on the scene, dead, made alive again, or whatever, or injured, healed? Yes. Can He use the first responders to save a life or to repair what's broken? Absolutely. Can He use the surgeons when you get to the hospital to help repair, restore? Absolutely. Even heaven forbid, if someone were to pass away, He still desires wholeness. And that's why there's the promise of the resurrection saying that no matter what, not even death can keep you from not being healed. Like you will be made whole. Like even in just the worst thing that could happen, I'm still all about redeeming. And so there's multiple avenues in which you can receive the healing. But even death, even like what the world would say is like, oh, well, that's it. That's like, you have been defeated. Jesus is like, no, not even that can keep me from making you whole.
Yeah. I love that. It makes me think of the Lazarus story. When we look at Jesus, and this is a story I take people to a lot because in this story we get to see what is God's relationship to death and suffering. How does it work? And when Lazarus is dying, Jesus wasn't like, oh, it's all good. This is part of God's plan. Why are you guys being so sad? No, He weeps. He realizes that this isn't how it should be. But He does say, oh, do you believe in, it talks to the sister, do you believe in me? And He says, even though, in me, like, even though they'll die, they shall live. Lazarus is going to get immediate resurrection right there, which is great. But yeah, you're right. Jesus says like, even though these people might come to pass, even though they die, they won't truly. I have victory there. I think another great passage in the New Testament when we're talking about just faith and medicine. Medicine, sometimes people think of just in terms of like pills or something, but anything that's external, not God-driven, anything that we're putting into our body to help and sort of heal us or make us better. I always think of one of the passages in, I can't remember if it's 1st or 2nd Timothy, but Paul's talking to Timothy and says, hey, buddy, I hear you got an upset stomach a lot, so you should just drink a little glass of wine with your meals in the evening time, and it's good for the stomach. Man, did Paul not have enough faith there? Was he just like, Timothy, man, your stomach's upset. You should like pray for that. And if it's not better, like maybe you need to check yourself for sin. Paul doesn't go that route. He says, hey, have some wine. And I don't want to be the guy that accuses Paul of like, not having good faith or whatever.
Yeah, that'd be tough to do. The guy who wrote the majority of our New Testament.
Wrote the book.
Yeah. And I think that's so good. And obviously, I think our listeners might get frustrated with us because so many times we're saying, hey, we're not falling into a camp here. And I think a lot of times our culture pressures people to fall into a camp. What I would say, a lot of times Jesus is in the middle. And I think many times Jesus is in the middle. And I think this is particularly one of those where like, yes, like there is room for faith, that there's room for medicine in both. Like, I mean, I always say to people like, yes, like God can heal, but He also gave us a brain. Like go to the doctor. Take medicine, He gave us a brain that works and like we can make wise decisions about our health. And not to just like go down a huge rabbit trail, but like God also gave us a brain about how to keep our bodies well. So speaking of medicine, but no one ever wants to talk about smart eating.
Kind of preventative
things
care.
Like that, like preventative care. A lot of times we do it to ourselves and we, blame God. I think.
Yeah.
Just to be really honest, I think a lot of times, when it comes to not every time. I know there's like, things out of our control.
Yeah, sure,
that happen to
cancer
our
or
body.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times, we do a very poor job considering our health, considering our bodies, and then we blame God for the aftermath.
You smoke 6 packs a day or whatever for how many years, and you have some cancer. I don't think God's out to smite you.
And so I know, again, like, you might be frustrated because we never, fall into a camp. I just want to hear them say like what they think. Well, obviously we're huge believers in both of those things. Like I said, we believe God can do miracles, but we also believe in science. And so to make this a little more culturally relevant, because I feel like this kind of applies to what's happening in the world today.
Yeah.
Obviously the last year and a half, the coronavirus has kind of run rampant, and
great point.
We knew that with this disease there would become a vaccine. And so a big cultural kind of talking point right now in Christianity is, do Christians get the vaccine? And I literally saw the other day about how, just again on social media, about it being kind of the mark of the beast.
Yes.
And, stuff like that. Which
666 and all
really
that.
blows my mind. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, like, again, your view on this has some serious implications because now you're talking about a global pandemic. There are people that are very vulnerable to this disease. That is a fact, by the way. Like, there are people that have died because of something that did not exist before. Like, that was always the argument in the beginning, was like, it's just like the flu. Well, there's like 100,000 people dead at this point that didn't get the flu. So like they died from the coronavirus. So, I mean, and then people start saying, well, did they really die from the fact? Whatever. But anyway, people are dying from this. They really are. Very vulnerable populations. I don't even know how many deaths are. But it's very serious. So, again, this has implications because Christians on one hand will say, we don't need a vaccine. Like,
we got Jesus.
Yeah, we got Jesus. And then other people saying, you're stupid. Take the vaccine. Like, it'll help humanity. And how could you not? Like, trust science. This is a scientific thing. This isn't a faith thing. And so there's...
I think you're right. That's such a good, relevant example of what's going on in our culture today and kind of navigating this, because I think you're right. I mean, we can have discussion about the merits of the vaccine, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, if your reasoning for saying I don't want this is because I don't need medicine or science, Jesus is enough, I would ask you to reconsider there. There's some other things we can talk about, but insofar as you're saying like, hey, I don't need this because I got Jesus and that's enough. Again, Paul didn't tell Timothy to not drink wine because that's enough. That there is good science behind this, and I think that to say like, hey, are these things meeting the FDA standards? Are they going through the proper protocols? Is all that kind of being taken care of? We have an instance where 6 cases out of so many million, there's an issue, and boom, stopped, held. FDA is not, I think, just letting anything through and slip by. When we start to connect these sort of things, though, to like marks of the beast and all that kind of stuff, we're moving beyond sort of just like the medicine's bad into some like you're reading some end time stuff into this. And so I'd say be careful readers of the book of Revelation, and that you're dealing with you're playing with fire sometimes. That book's a little crazy. And so trying to interpret it responsibly and understand what's going on.
And we say
important.
all the time, like, there's different types of literature throughout the Bible, and Revelation is not a textbook. It's just not. It's not this like.
John the Seer is not giving us
prophetic. It's a prophetic book, and that's how it should be properly translated.
We're reading some apocalyptic literature here that is
for sure.
Interesting, and I'd love to talk all about what I think 666 and the Mark of the Beast is, but that's probably for another day.
That'll be a good topic, actually. Real talk on real topics. So just to kind of recap here, obviously, faith and science go hand in hand, and again, we're in the middle. We think both are really important, but that's okay. Like, don't let culture force you into a camp here. Like, it's okay to kind of believe that God can heal, yes. You can also believe that medicine is important, science is important, and you should trust experts in that field. That's okay as well. It's both and.
And God's good, and He's given us a good gift in medicine.
And like talking about the vaccine, like, I got it. I got the vaccine. Proud to say that. I trust the scientific community. I trust what they're doing. Other people may not, and that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like we said earlier, if the reason is that you think you have Jesus and don't need it, reconsider. If there's other factors, we get that too. But yeah. Anything else you want to add?
No, I would, just encourage people to say, I tell people all the time, you can have Jesus and a therapist. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say you can have Jesus and a doctor. In fact, I heartily recommend it. It's a really good thing for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And we, it's kind of side note here as we wrap up, like as pastors, we're dealing with people and honestly their brokenness or however you want to call it, their, need of health in a lot of ways, mental, emotional, spiritual. We are often sought as a very, like, hey, you can help me.
Catch all.
Yeah. And yeah, I just want to echo what Curtis just said, that it's okay to have Jesus and a therapist, and we aren't therapists. We can give you Jesus for sure, but, I can't replace what a mental health expert or a professional can provide you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't replace what a physical doctor can provide you. I can't replace what medicine can provide you.
Yeah.
And I have no qualms with saying that. And just so you know, if you are listening and you attend our church or you consider us a pastor to you, we will always tell you, go see a professional.
Yeah.
Like we are not, that in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And on the reverse side, it's true too. The medical professional, the doctor can't be the spiritual caretaker and the pastor that they are. We need both roles. And so, talk to your pastor, talk to your doctors, get holistic care, mind, body, and spirit. So
That's right.
It's important. Yeah. Jesus and medicine, man, they go great together.
They do. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for joining us again here on The Current. We'll be back next Friday with another great episode. We'll see you then. Grace and peace.